all you have to do is listen, and all I have to do is talk. So, now, today what we're doing in my first podcast ever is I'm going to tell you the story of my life, my journey as a cook. I started cooking at age 7. Yep, I was 7 years old when I created my first dish, and it was lobster. It was actually that what you call crayfish in India, which we also call lobster here. Actually, we used to live in Mud Island, and our house was on top of this hill, and below the hill was the fisherman's village. So every day I used to come back from school and pick up my dog and go running down, and we'd play there in the fisherman's village, and the boats would be coming in at that time, and all this major amounts of fish would be, taken out in baskets and stuff like that. And one day, I guess one of the fishermen thought it very amusing, so he handed me a crayfish. And it was a pretty large one. And so I took that, I didn't go home with it because I knew my mother would get it. So I took it to a neighbor's house, and luckily the neighbors weren't home, but their servant was. Sorry, I don't know what the right politically correct term would be. The person who used to take care of children and stuff. So he said, yeah, fine, we cook it. And so I said, I'm going to cut it. He said, you know how? I said, yes, I know how. Anyway, I chopped it up into little bits, and including the head. And then I made him put a lot of butter in a fry pan, and I dumped in this crayfish and fried it until it was nice and brown, and then I ate it. It was pretty yummy. And there was a little leftover which the neighbors actually came back and ate, and they also loved it. So I was this great cook, and I was so confident in my cooking abilities, having created that one major dish, that the next Sunday when my mother was out, I decided to cook a bengal. And I put this bengal in a fry pan like I'd seen this person do, and I put it on the gas, and I ran off to the plate. And I forgot all about that bengal, and it cooked so well that my mother had to throw out that fry pan. So anyway, that was the end of my cooking journey at that point. And I was always fascinated with food. I didn't like eating so much, but there were certain tastes that appealed to me. And when I came of an age where I could sort of, create those tastes for myself, I would try and do that. And one of the major influencers in trying to create my own food was my sister. She was always doing things like mixing imli with a little bit of mustard oil and salt and sugar, and she would mash it up, and we would sit in the afternoon and eat that with while we were reading our books and things like that. So I knew that it was possible to make those tastes, and I was always trying to do it for myself. So my next attempt at cooking happened when I was in school, and we used to do these Duke of Edinburgh camps. The school was Lawrence, and we used to go off on these camps, and we were given provisions, and we had to cook for ourselves. We were given these kerosene stoves. I don't know how many of you ever used a kerosene stove. It's quite an art to light it. But anyway, we were taught how to use the kerosene stove, and we used to cook our own food on that. And because I had my experience at the age of 7 years of cooking, I bullied my other 3 campmates by saying, okay, I'm the head cook, and you all eat what I'm cooking. And it was fun. And when we were sort of, packing up camp and trekking back to school, there were still a few potatoes left and a little bit of oil, and we had about half an hour time to sort of get ready. So I quickly lit up that stove, and I told Jyoti that, come on, put the potatoes in, put the oil in, let's cook it up and get ready on the way. And we barely got to sort of saute those potatoes for a couple of minutes when Mrs. Gupta, our teacher, she came and said, okay, come on, pack up, we're going. Get on. So we took those half-cooked potatoes with us, and when we did get hungry on the way back to school, actually sat down in the middle of the road and crunched our way through those potatoes. They were pretty yummy. So I guess hunger is the best sauce. Anyway, then I cooked for myself again when I was in college, and this time it was noodle soup, because I used to come back from college and get like really hungry around 6, 7 o'clock. And my mother used to make this big pot of beef. She used to boil it in heat for dog people, and it used to have a lot of stock, a lot of gravy in it and stuff. So I used to fish out a few pieces of the beef and ladle out some of that stock, put my noodles in it, put green chilies and tomato and coriander and a little bit of onion and stuff, and it would actually come out pretty good. So much so that my mama had come home, and she sort of told me, why don't you make your noodle soup for me? So I guess it was good. So good, in fact, that I tried to make tomato soup. And I don't know what it was, why I needed to do it, but I actually heated a little oil, put a chunk of jeera, and then I put my tomato in there and cooked it, and then added water and boiled it. And at some point my dad had walked into the kitchen and he was like, what are you doing? So I said, I'm making tomato soup. So he said, oh, I'll also have some. So I said, okay, fine. So I served him this cup of tomato soup, jeera floating around. He took one sip of it and he said, it's very good. Why don't you do one thing? Tomorrow boil a few eggs and put it in, and it will be a nice egg curry. So that was it. And I was sort of known as the clown cook of the family. Once I remember my 18th birthday, yes, my 18th birthday, it was really a birthday to remember, because Calcutta had got flooded that year. And my mother had, she'd gone to my grandparents' home for some puja, and she couldn't come back. She was stuck over there because the roads were flooded. And Dad had tried once to go and fetch her, and he came back and he brought this one fish. He said, I couldn't get your mother, but I got you a fish. So I was like, okay. So luckily our our maid helper, Lokhi, she was still there. So she cut the fish and she kept it away. And the next day, which was my birthday eve, my father came home with his cousins, the Maharaja and Maharani of Tripura, and they were stranded at the airport. He was like, there's no way I can leave them there to sleep in the guest room over there, so we're going to spend the night here, and we have to give them dinner. So I was like, what do we give them for dinner? Because whatever leftovers there were in the fridge that Mom had cooked and gone, we had sort of, finished most of it off in the last 2-3 days. So Dad said, what about that fish? I bought a fish, you can cook the fish. So I was like, I can cook the fish. Okay, so that fish was taken out of the freezer, and I sort of tried to cook it the best way I could. So I put everything into it. There was onion, garlic, ginger, tomato, and all the powder masalas that I found. I put it all in, and it didn't taste good to me. So I was like, how do I rescue this fish now? So in those days, people still used Ajinomoto, and my mother had a big jar of it. So I took a spoonful of Ajinomoto and I dumped it in the fish. And then I served it at the table. And you won't believe it, he actually loved it. He said, wow, this is amazing fish curry. What did you do? How did you make it? And I was like, yeah, I'll tell you the recipe sometime. And when my mother came back, my father very proudly told her that, oh, your daughter made some fish curry for my cousins. So my mom said, what did you do? I said, I put Ajinomoto. That was me, the clown of the family when it came to cooking. So much so I made gobi ka roast, cauliflower roast. My grandmother used to make it. And I think I used too much curd, I put water in it, it refused to dry up, it refused to become the beautiful golden brown that she would make. And I put all sorts of masalas in it, which when my brother-in-law ate it, he said, oh, why don't dahi bada. So I was like, this can't carry on. I have to learn how to cook. So I told my mother, can you please teach me how to cook? Ma wasn't a very good teacher. She wasn't very patient when it came to teaching. And especially when she herself knew how to do something, she was like, it's all common sense. I mean, what is there to learn how to cook? She said, you've got your whole life ahead of you to cook. So why do you want to, learn? So I said, but I mean, I need to learn to cook something. The only thing I can make are omelets and that noodle soup, that too, because you boil the beef the way you do. So, by the way, omelets I'd learned from Mills and Boons. Yes, I was addicted to Mills and Boons, and there, one of the stories, the hero, this dashing young man, was teaching. One second, I'll just switch off the fan.
Some people are saying they can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? So, is that
Okay.
fine? So, yeah, like I was telling you, that I learned how to make an omelette from a Mills and Boon. This dashing young man was teaching the heroine, this beautiful blonde, how to make an omelette, and he added like 2 drops of water in it, and then he beat it up and make this light, fluffy omelette. So I was very inspired to make omelettes, and I was pretty good at the omelette, yes. But I told my mother I can't live the rest of my life with noodle soup and omelette. There has to be something else. So she said, okay, Sunday's coming up, I'll teach you how to make mutton curry. And what a mutton curry that was, because she had done all the miso flour. So the mutton was there, the onions were there, the ginger garlic pastes were there, the dhania, jeera, everything that had to go into that mutton was already prepped and ready. I walked into the kitchen. My mother said, okay, the first thing you have to do is marinate the meat. So I marinated the meat. I said, what quantity? She said, just everything's measured out, just put it into the meat. So I marinated the meat. I said, okay, now what next? She said, okay, now you heat the oil. So I heated the oil. Then she said, now you have to fry the onions. So I fried the onions, and that was like, it took 15 minutes for those damn onions to brown. And I was stirring away, and Ma was like, patience is the one thing you have to learn where cooking is concerned. You can't be impatient. You can't hurry it up. It will take its own time to cook. So I was like, okay, fine. Onion browning. So the onions browned, then the meat went in, and the lid was shut. And then again, it was like, wait for the pressure to go beep, which it did finally. And then wait for the pressure to drop, then open it up, put in the potatoes, put in the garam masala, shut it again, one more whistle. Anyway, after that one lesson in how to cook mutton curry, I said, okay, enough. My mother said, okay, enough. And that was it. That was the end of my lessons, my formal lessons in cooking. Never happened again after that. Then when Ma went away to Delhi and I was left behind in Calcutta, I really missed her cooking, because she was one of the best cooks that I have ever come across. She could make magic out of anything. And when she came back for a holiday, I said, Ma, okay, you can't teach me how to cook, but at least if you can tell me what ingredients go into some of the dishes that I love and the order in which they go in. You see, in Indian cooking and any cooking, it's very important the order in which you put things in. And that is something that I had realized early on in my days, because I used to spend a lot of time in the kitchen with my mother. So she said, okay, fine. So I sat down. I had this old algebra notebook left over from my school days. And so I sat down and wrote things like chop churi and patla machi chol and aloo posto and all the lovely, yummy Bengali stuff that she used to cook, including some things from Agartala, like bhatta bhaja. You might have seen some of these in our episodes. And so I had around 15-20 recipes that I sort of wrote down from her. And I was like, okay, I'm going to cook. So one day I decided today is the day that I'm going to cook. And in order to do that, I had to go and get the ingredients. Now in Calcutta, what happens is you get the best ingredients, the best produce early in the morning. So 5:30 in the morning I got up, and as soon as I exited my building, there was a rickshawala there. So I got onto that rickshaw and I said, Lake Market. Because Lake Market was where Dhruvoda, the fish man, is. Now Dhruvoda was our family fish man. My mama had discovered him, and mama used to buy all his fish from Dhruvoda. And my mother, whenever we used to come into town, we used to always go and buy from Dhruvoda. So I said, okay, I have never bought fish in my life before, so I shall go to Dhruvoda. And Dhruvoda, when he saw me there, in my sari and with my little plastic tokri in my hand, he was like, what are you doing here? I was like, why? I've come to buy fish. And as I said that, I looked all around me, and there was not a single woman shopper over there. In Calcutta, I don't know, I guess the whole of Bengal, it is the men folk who go and buy the produce in the morning for the meals that are going to be cooked that day. And I remember my grandfather used to go every morning, and he used to come back with a tokri full of stuff, and he would like hand it over to my grandmother, and then she would sort things out, and my grandfather would stand and watch over it and say that this is how I want that cooked, and that is how I want that cooked. And so the menu for the day would get decided according to my grandfather. And here I was, this young woman in this market full of men. But I said, well, Dhruvoda, I want to learn, so I've come, so can I get some fish? So he said, okay, what fish do you want? Now, I just about knew one or two names. So I said, what is that? He said, Rui. So I said, okay, give me some Rui. So he said, what do you want? Do you want the peti or the gada, or the laj or the matha? So peti is the stomach portion of the fish, gada is the back portion, laj is the tail, and matha is the head. And I was like, well, so he said, what do you cook? So I said, I'm making machichu. So he said, okay. Then he gave me, from a huge big 5-kilo fish or something, he gave me the middle portion which had the stomach as well as the back part of it. And he said, take this and we should be making good machichu with it. So I said, okay. And then of course I discovered the vegetables, the gandharaj lebu, the pumpkin, all the kinds of vegetables, gourds, and various things, and every vendor over there so proud of their produce, and everything fresh and like literally dew laden. Of course they'd obviously been sprinkling water, but it really looked so beautiful and colorful, and for me it was like a real eye-opening experience. And that is one thing about Calcutta that I'll never forget. Whether it was Lake Market or Baliganj Market or New Market even, shopping for food is one of the biggest joys you can have in Calcutta. So anyway, what I learned from my experience with Dhruvoda is very often it's good to tell your vendor what you are buying something for, especially when you're unsure of what you want to pick up. So things like meats or chicken or fish or whatever, even things like vegetables. I remember once in Delhi in Aine Market, this guy had some haq, that Kashmiri saag, and I looked at it, I didn't recognize it, even though I'd eaten haq before. I asked him, I said, what is this? He said, this is haq, it's just come from Srinagar. So I said, okay, wow, and I'd love to buy it, but I don't know how to cook it. So he sort of told me a recipe on how to cook it. And there was another gentleman there who was a Kashmiri, and he said, no, this is where you're going wrong, this is how you should do it, and that is how haq is made, and try it this way, my wife makes it, and I'm sure you'll love it. So you never know what sort of conversations you sort of pick up when you go to buy your produce, and the kind of recipe ideas that people give you over there, and their own sort of experiences with various things. So it's important. Like when I go to my meat man, I always tell him, भैया बिरयानी बनाना है, या भैया मुझे कबाब के लिए कीमा चाहिए, or I want to make rezala, so I want this, I want to make curry, so I want that. I want to make nihari, so give me all the nallis. So it's very important for the person you're buying from to know what you are buying it for. And even in a city like Bombay, where I find that most of the vendors sort of just go hack, 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 and give you things in small little pieces. But if you sort of appeal to their aesthetic side, for want of a better word, and tell them that I want it cut this way because this is what I'm making. I'm making a roast or whatever where I want the leg and thigh in pieces and the breast in pieces. So could you please cut it like that? And very soon you'll find that they're actually sort of responding to you and giving you much better cuts of the meat than you were probably getting previously. So anyway, back to Dhruvoda and my experience in Calcutta markets. It's, even today when I go visiting Calcutta, even though, we're, Amit and I are like staying in a hotel or something like that, but we always stop off because even Amit loves it. And last time we were there, we stopped off at Baliganj market. And I, of course, bought the hindus and we bought some gourd and things like that. And there was this lovely koi mach which these guys had. Koi is, I don't know what they call it in English, but it's a really tasty but bony fish and available only in Calcutta. And I looked at that koi and the fisherman saw me and he was like, Didi niye jaan, sort of take it. And I was like, no, we're staying in a hotel, there's no way I can take it. And Amit, of course, was like, koi. He wasn't into eating koi because too many bones for him. And he's not a small fish guy. So I looked at Amit, I was like, you think the hotel guys will cook it for us if we take it? Amit said, no, no way, we are not buying koi. And a couple of weeks later, we were in Hyderabad and we came upon this quail farm. And that horrible man, he bought quail and he took it back to the hotel and he got them to cook it for him just because he liked quail and he wasn't going to, he didn't sort of indulge me when I wanted koi. So that is a bone I have to pick with him and I shall pick it very soon. Anyway, after Calcutta, I guess I was cooking every day of my life. From the age of 21, when I discovered that I could cook and I could actually make dishes that resembled what my mother and my grandmother and people like that were making, I didn't stop cooking. I don't know why it happened or what it was that happened. I remember one afternoon I'd gone across to my paternal grandmother, who was also a great cook. She was the one who used to make samosas for us in the evening at home, and there would always be luchi tarkari or chire bhaja, some special snack she would always make in the evenings. And of course her Agartala food was to die for. So I used to go over there and hang around and say, Devi, cook this for me, Devi, cook that for me. And she indulged me for a while, and then one day she got really irritated. She said, why do you keep saying cook this for me, cook that for me? Learn to cook it yourself. Who will cook it for you when I die? So I thought about it, and it was actually true what she was saying. So I said, okay, fine. So I came back to her with that algebra notebook, which was still quite empty, and I said, okay, now tell me, teach me how to cook. So again, she sat down and told me the ingredients, and my grandaunt was also there, her younger sister, Chichi Devi, and the two sisters got into such a fight. No, you put the garlic first. No, you don't put the garlic first. And I mean, I barely managed to get like 5 recipes out of them because for over every recipe, the two sisters would sit and argue about what went in and what didn't go in. They were both amazing cooks. But I guess everybody has their own way of doing things. So I decided to myself, okay, I'll get Devi's recipes later and I'll do Chichi Devi's recipes separately when she's not, when these two are not together. And get the best of those words. Sorry. But that was a lesson that was really important to me from my Devi, my grandmother. Because it's something that I have followed all my life. I mean, when I like something, I make sure that I learn how to make it, because I know that the only person who's going to reproduce it for me time and again is going to be me and nobody else. So whether it's that Himachal wala green chili pickle, which has a little Indi khatta meetha tikha kind of stuff, or whether it's butter chicken, or whether it's a fish curry, or whether it's a particular kind of pasta, or whatever, pate, anything, dishes that I like, or dishes that I discover, I make sure that I learn how to make it. Even if it's at a dhaba, at a wayside dhaba, like, when we were shooting in Bhopal, we'd come across, we'd be on the road and we'd be stopping at places and eating over there, and sometimes, you discover something that's really good, like a dal maybe, or a particular way they're making the roti, or a paratha. I remember this paratha I ate. We were on our way back from Jaipur, I think, on the road, and it was pretty late at night, and there was just this one small little dhaba, and we were really hungry. Amit wasn't there with me, I was with some other colleagues, and so we stopped at the dhaba and we asked them, like, what can you give us? So they said, we can give you stuffed parathas. I said, okay, fine, stuffed paratha sounds good, aloo ka paratha, gobi ka paratha, whatever paratha you want. And this guy stuffed it and rolled it out and everything, and then he fried it, he deep fried it. He didn't sort of, like do it on a tawa, he did it in a fry pan. And I was like, wow. So we ate that deep fried paratha. Of course, it was very tasty, but very sinful, and one could barely manage like one paratha each. But I haven't tried doing that for myself as yet, and I probably will one of these days, because I'm very tempted. I keep thinking about that paratha, and I'm going to do it one of these days, maybe when Amit isn't home, we can do the other thing. But probably one of the things that's helped me along my way as somebody who can cook or who cooks is that I seem to have a very good memory, visual memory of instances. So I actually have, visible memories of my grandmothers, of my mother, of my aunts, of my sister, of various people who have been influences in my life as cooks. And whenever I do get down to, making a particular thing, or every morning when I go into the kitchen, I find I'm invoking some memory or the other, and it sort of puts me in that happy place. And cooking in the old days was actually a very, very happy kind of everyday occasion that happened in a home, especially when they were joint family homes where all the women sort of sat around together, and days gossip would happen, and did you see that, and did you do that, and did you buy this, and all sorts of things would carry on while they would chop the vegetables, and they would get the whole miso pla ready, and there would be this beautiful brass or kasha, I don't know what they call kasha in English, thalis, and sorry, I seem to have a runny nose, because thanks to this amazing dhaba gosht that I'm taking for lunch today. But anyway, these women would sort of sit around, and like for the vegetable, each thing would be cut differently. For the fish curry, it would be cut differently. For mutton, things would be cut differently. For a bharta or for a bhaja, it would all be cut differently. And they would like sort of sit over there and have a really fun party doing all this. And today, when you're in a nuclear home and it's just you and your husband living in an apartment and you're going to cook and you're alone in the kitchen, there's nobody there. So what do? You sort of depend on your memories and have all these people there with you. And nowadays, of course, I have you. I'm always talking to you and cooking with you. So that is great fun. But that's probably why I enjoy it so much. But it's very important to enjoy the act of cooking, so that what you're making, the love that you put into it, actually sort of shows up in the dish later on. Like my mother said, you can't hurry it. Like my grandmother said, you have to sort of learn it, do it for yourself. and make sure you sort of get everything the way you want it to be. Tweak things to your taste or whatever. And it's very important because everybody has a different taste, a different palate. What appeals to me might not appeal to you or might not appeal to Amit or whatever. And I discovered this pretty early on because as a child I wasn't a great eater. I would actually throw my food into the dustbin. So when I had my daughter, I was like, okay, I'm not going to force her to eat anything. Whatever she wants to eat, she'll eat. So I used to make these little platters for her with these finger sandwiches, and, boiled vegetables and meat and stuff like that. She probably got her genes from her father because she would polish off that whole plate, and she would eat everything that I gave her. And it was a joy to feed her and sort of plan her meal for her, little bits of things for a child. So I enjoy cooking for people. I love feeding people. And if you are ever nearby, please, you're most welcome to come and have a meal with us. We both love, feeding people, and it would be a great pleasure and a great honor to do that. And do I need to say? Any questions there?
People are having problems with the
Okay, so I think I have sort of rambled on and on and on. The next podcast, what I'm going to do is use a mic. Does that headphone have a mic? The iPhone I'm sure it does. You use it for your phone, right?
Yeah.
Just get that. Can you plug it in? Is that better? Can you guys hear me better now? Hello?
Yeah, carry on.
Okay, so as I was saying, um, I've been cooking now for, if I count age 7, then around 55 odd years, which is a pretty long time. But no, actually, I would say I've been cooking for around 40 years. I won't take those initial years very seriously.
Yeah, no, the voice is fine.
And I've had experiences cooking in various different kitchens. I used to work for the Oberoi's for a while, and there's so much of hotel food that you can eat. So I used to actually go into the kitchen and ask the chef that, do you mind if I cook something? And luckily the chef was a Bengali, so he'd say, yeah, like no problem, go ahead, cook whatever you want. And I'd be making khichdi and begun bhaja and things like that. Then when I was working for the Srinagar property, I used to actually carry food, raw materials like bacon and fish and all that with me all the way across to Srinagar and then cook for all the staff over there, and we'd have a party. And so many people's kitchens, I don't know what it is. I probably feel most comfortable in a kitchen. I must have been a kitchen maid in my last birth. But whenever I go for like a party or something, I invariably end up in the kitchen. I'm either helping the hostess or helping the cook or actually cooking something or something like that. I remember this one instance. We were in Aurangabad, and one of my colleagues had fallen very ill. He had this very bad viral fever kind of thing, and he wasn't being able to eat anything. So we asked the hotel guys if they could give us khichdi, and of course their khichdi came with a lot of red chili oil on it and various things like that. So we said, okay, no khichdi, can we have soup? And the soup came, it was like almost like a hot and sour soup and things like that. And Mukul was like, no way I can eat this. So finally I asked the manager, I said, do you mind if I make a bowl of soup for my friend, because he's going to starve to death otherwise. So the manager said, fine, please go ahead. So I went in and I said, okay, chicken stock, cabbage, carrots, this, that, whatever, one egg bashed into it. and there was this very nice, light, brothy kind of a soup. So the guy who was helping me, he was very interested. He said, "Madam, ये soup का नाम क्या है?" So I said, "This soup, call it Toto soup." Toto is my pet name. So I don't know if that hotel ever made Toto soup again, but I've sort of had this thing of, wandering into kitchens and just cooking because I kind of enjoy it, and I find it's simpler to actually cook it yourself than to explain to somebody how it needs to be done. Whether it's, I mean, that's probably why Amit and I have never managed to keep a cook. I did have one for a very short while, a lady called Begum, who was a very good cook, and I had to like think and tell her that, okay, make this and make that and I was like, by the time I think and tell her, I would have done it myself. So what's the big deal? So Begum was a cook for me for probably a month or so. And after that, she sort of started doing other things and said, Didi, you cook, I'll do all this other stuff. So I was like, okay, fine. So I've never had the sort of joy of keeping a cook in the house. And sometimes when you meet people who say that, oh, my cook has gone on leave, and for the last 10 days we've only been eating pizza. I was like, why pizza? Just make a dal and chawal. You don't need anything else. Why are you surviving on pizza? But that's me. So I guess I'm different. But anyway, if you're watching this and you've been with us so long, I'm sorry about the audio. We've had issues earlier. I should have actually put this on much, much, much earlier. And I hope you tune in again next week when I try and come back, when I do come back with my second podcast. And for any issues, problems, rambles, whatever, please remember, this is the first time I'm doing this, and I don't know how good I am at it, but we shall do, what do you call it? Dissection of this whole thing much later once Amit sort of sits down and tells me, you did this wrong and you did that wrong. So anyway, bye bye and see you again soon. And meanwhile, do keep watching our episodes. We are sort of, coming up with more and more different kinds of things. And if there's anything that you particularly want to know how to make or how we would make, then we'd be more than happy to try out a recipe for you. If you have a recipe you'd like to share, then please do share, because we really enjoy cooking other people's food as well. We love eating other people's food as well. And so with that, I shall bid you goodbye and have a good Sunday, whatever's left of it. And see you next week with a whole lot of episodes on the Slow Fire Chef.